here we go. It is our final mini model day. Today is all about the angles. So we are going to be using a parallelogram as our base, but the angles are not just going to end there. And I don't want to have any spoiler alerts, so I'm not going to tell you anything more quite yet. You're going to have to just follow along and listen in to see how we're going to really angle all of this up. Here we go. First and foremost, you're going to need a total of 8 sticks. So whether, toothpicks, whatever you got, get those out. Is your hot glue gun plugged in? Because if not, you're going to want to do that. It takes a few minutes to get warm. Get that ready to go. Let's see. Other things that we're going to want. We're going to want our cutters as well. And since we're going to be cutting, we're going to need some safety gear. Whether you've got just regular old glasses, some goggles, swimming goggles, science, experiment goggles, or if you're like me and I'm like, I don't have those things, I'm just using some shades. Basically, when I cut something with my wire cutters, the last thing I want is for it to go woo, 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 and boop into your eye. My goal as your teacher is going to be that you leave our time together relatively unscathed. All your fingers and toes that you started the semester with, that you still have those. Your eyeballs, you still have those. Okay. We want all those things still intact when you leave. Hopefully we don't get too hurt, okay? So whenever we're cutting, we want to have protective eye gear on, and we will be cutting today. So have that by your side, ready to go. And then you guys know I also really like using parchment paper for these just because it's a lot easier to peel off than, say, cardboard, or it's even easier than wax paper or tin foil. So if you've got parchment paper, use that. Otherwise, whatever you got, right? Another thing that I want to remind you of while we're making these is we're giving ourselves grace. We're going to have patience with ourselves. We are still in that practice mode. Next class, we're going to start moving from practice mode to like project mode where, hey, this is actually my final one. But for right now, we're still in practice mode. So if, as you're making it, you've got all these little strings and globbers, and that's fine for today, right? We just want to get the concept down. So that is fine. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to start by cutting two sticks in half, making 4. Now I'm going to choose one of each of these colors. You'll see why in just a bit. There is a method behind my madness, and yours probably aren't colored. I just like to use colors when I'm doing the demo videos. I think it's easier to see all of the shapes more clearly when they're different colors. But I'm going to be cutting, so time to turn on cool mode right here. Okay. Was that cool? For us to decide, I suppose. All right. So cutting these 2 in half. There's 1. And here's 2. Ooh, those are not quite equal, but it's good enough for today. We're in practice mode. It's fine. Tomorrow I'll try to make those a little bit more perfect. For now, they're good. All right. So I am going to start with making 1 parallelogram. And remember, it's all about those angles. So before, whereas we would have tried to have gone more like this, right? And have all those corners squared, have it all be even. No, we're not doing that. We're going for this kind of angled look today, sort of like that. Of course, they don't want to stay in place, so we're going to have to use our hot glue for that. Here we go. So we'll start with a little hot glue there, and we want it as a reminder. We're looking for angles today. Looking for angles. There we go. And we'll connect those 2 together. Keeping that angle alive here. There we go. It's happening. And finally, here and here. And we'll connect that last side. So we have something. Is the hot glue even on that one? That's the shorter one. See, this is why it's a problem when they're not exactly the same size. That one was barely reaching. We'll make it work. It'll be fine for today. Okay. Angles, yay! We'll put that one off to the side. Time for our second one. Okay. So same thing as before. I want to really try to mimic those angles as best as I can, okay? So here we go. So trying to get that as exact to that one as I can. If I wanted to, I could actually draw this out first and put my parchment over the top. If I drew it with a permanent marker, I'd be able to see through my parchment paper. Once again though, this is a mini model. I'm not that worried about it. It looks like they're about the same. We're going to call it good for today. We're just trying to get all these concepts down before we decide on what do we want our final one to look like. We'll use all these concepts we've been learning, you know, the varied widths and the prisms and the angles and adding one thing to another thing like we did with the pyramid on top of the cube. We're going to decide how do we want to combine all these things we've learned to make our ultimate lantern. That's going to be our goal. Okay. We're almost there, you guys. This one's not too bad today. This is actually easier than last class. At least probably for most of us, it's going to feel easier than last class. But we've also got some designing to do today, so yeah. All right, let's see if this one's ready to come off. We probably could have spent another minute or two, but you can see we've got that going. And we'll wait another minute just for that one to dry. Actually, you know what? Because this one, I can just leave it on there. I'm going to get started with our next steps. So next steps is we're going to actually cut these in half. We're going to have it be kind of shorter. So as you're designing your final one later today, remember that you can vary the lengths of things. And that's going to add more visual interest too. You know, like in this one that we started with, you know, they're all the same. And it works, right? Like it works. It is a prism. It's a 3D shape. But we can add more visual interest by doing things like, you know, changing the width of certain sides. Like maybe if I had one of these triangles smaller than the other one, that could add some interest. And then also, here we go. When we're adding things together, you know, doing things like, okay, well, this is smaller and that one's bigger. When we added that together, you know, it brought it out more of that angle, which looks kind of cool. And then, of course, when we did the other side of it, you know, we've got the smaller one. These two are actually the same. These hexagons, the orange one and the red one. But then with my green, I cut those down a bit, right? They're not as long as the blue. And when we do things like that, you can see how you end up with a much more interesting shape than when everything is just the same. So as we're designing today, we'll want to keep that in mind. Anyway, all that because I just wanted to mention that, you know, you have the ability to decide how long you want those connecting pieces to be. But for this example, I'm going to go with shorter over longer. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these in half. Now you could cut them in, you know, 3/4 and then cut them all like that. You decide, but I'm going to cut these in half. Boop. And there we go. All right, so I'm done cutting. I can take off my super cool shades. And since I'm done cutting, I can also put this away somewhere safe. And now it's time to glue these together. Now, if we're looking at the directions, it says that this time when we're gluing them together, we're not just going to glue them so that they're like straight. Okay, so this would be like if there is one just right on top of the other, it's going to give us this effect. Okay? No. This time we're going to add some interest. We're going to actually glue it at an angle too. I told you, today's all about the angles. I told you that there was going to be something else coming and I didn't want to spoil it. Yes, this has an angle, but why can't our connecting pieces also have an angle? So that's going to be another option and decision that you get to make when you're connecting your pieces and when you're designing your final lantern too. Do you want it to be at an angle? Let's see if this is dry enough to pick up yet. I think it'll be easier if I can. Here we go. I can. Whoop, those little hairs getting in the way. Okay, so what I'm going to do, what side do I want to start on? I'm going to start on this side. Work from left to right. For me, just because I am right-handed, and I think that's going to be a little easier for me. So notice how I did 2 at a time, sort of like we did last class. And as I am quickly working to connect these, I want to make sure that instead of straight up and down, I'm going to keep them at more of an angle as they dry. Now you may find that with this, it's not going to be maybe quite as strong initially of a structure. So you might need to go back in and just add a little bit more glue around the bases of some of them just to help it hold its shape. Okay, bring this a little closer here. Make sure I've got all my stuff ready. And here we go. Gluing there, and the underbellies of these. Oh my gosh, I'm almost out of glue, you guys. Probably should have checked that before I started this whole escapade. Okay, and I wanted it at that angle again. There we go. Whoopsies, that guy got loose. Patience and grace. Remember, that's what we want to do for ourselves. Okay, I have just efficiently glued my toothpick to my finger instead of to the parallelogram. Whoops. Once again, patience and grace. Even your art teacher sometimes gets things a little crazy. But you can see when all is said and done, I do have that angle. There we go. And here's what it looks like from the other view. And you can just see how by just adding an angle, gluing it at an angle instead makes it look really nice. Once again, like that, there are pieces of hot glue hair coming out every which side. This is our mini model. I'm not too worried, but when it comes time to our final, we can go ahead and trim some of that up and make it look more clean cut. For today, as long as you've got your parallelogram at a nice angle all the way around, that's what we're looking for. All right, you'll notice in our instructions then, let's hop back over there. Step 5 says, knowing that you have 14 full skewers and that you may cut them to your varying lengths, so you can remember. So like, just because you have 14 doesn't mean you can only have 14 things in your lantern, 14 lines, because maybe some of your skewers you cut in half or thirds. It's going to depend on what you're doing. But what I want you to do is begin designing your final lantern. As you do this, as you're designing your final lantern, I expect that you're using that straight edge. I want to see some really nice straight lines. They should all, any given part should have the same lengths. So for example, if I was drawing this, each of these should be, 2 inches long, or however big you're hoping they should be. They should all be matching. What else do I want to see? I want to see you guys experimenting with these concepts we've learned. Yes, this does make a lantern. It does. How can we expand on it? Using the things we've done over the last few classes. Let's just take a scroll back here. Let's see, where did we start? Here we go. Are you going to make just a prism? Are you going to, so that was a triangular prism, right? Are you going to add 2 together? So where you're going to take your, a pyramid on top of a cube, where you can, or, whatever you're choosing to add together, as long as they have the same number of sides, it can work. Are you going to add varying widths, like we did with this, right? Where there's some that are smaller and some that are bigger, and then that gives us those angles. Are you going to make angles another way, where it goes like this. Like you could even do another one of these, right? And then attach it from the bottom where that one isn't as angled, or maybe it's angled the other way, making it almost like a chevron shape. So I want you to play around with all the concepts we've learned over the last few days to draw up what you think would be an ultimate, really cool lantern, using those 14 skewers in a smart way, we're knowing we can cut them up into smaller pieces, and seeing what your design looks like, okay? So have a nice drawing, measured, okay? So making sure that all those lines are the same, straight edges. Have that ready to go along with your angled parallelogram for next time, and we'll see you then.